love tests. Just kidding, I'm lying to you. I like some tests. Less written tests, though I can finesse the hell out of a multiple choice or short answers question like nobody's business. But more like tests you don't even know you're taking until after you've taken them. Like a covert media literacy test. That's right, internet, you are not escaping this discourse with me. Some of you are consuming entertainment while sleeping with your eyes open, and I'm here to talk about it. Let's go. So obviously media literacy discussion is at an all-time high, which some people do find annoying. But do you know what I find more annoying? Being media illiterate. All media has a message. Yes, all of it. Yeah, even that one thing you like.
Nuh-uh, my favorite show from when I was growing up wasn't even remotely political.
Meanwhile, the show in question is X-Men. Yeah, okay. This is me grabbing the rose-colored nostalgia goggles off your face. Wake up. The creators of any piece of media want you to take something away from what they've made, a lesson they want to share. It's a glimpse into their perspective on the world. So, why aren't some people getting it?
What's not clicking? What's not clicking?
Like, imagine baking a cake and spending all of this time sourcing these amazing quality ingredients and baking it to perfection. You decorate it just right. It is the perfect cake. Then somebody curb stomps your cake and says, ugh, gross, there's cake on my shoes. This cake sucks. How can you say that you hate the cake? You didn't eat it. How can you have such a strong opinion on the cake when you didn't consume it the way you were supposed to? I think it's important to make sure that we're actually engaging with the media that we consume at a critical level. More on that later. And good thing there's plenty of media out there to practice with, and plenty of characters that serve as perfect tests for where your media literacy is at. So while I'm fired up on the topic, let's run through a few of them and see if you were picking up what the creators were putting down. And unlike most tests, there's no penalty for a wrong answer. Except for my silent, ever-present judgment. Anyway, let's begin. Starting off easy, we've got Heisenberg himself, Walter White. Now, this is a guy whose name gets thrown around in these conversations all the time. Probably too much, but for good reason. Y'all aren't getting it. For the uninitiated, Walter White is the protagonist of AMC's hit series Breaking Bad. Starting the series as a downtrodden high school science teacher, Walter's life takes a nosedive when he's diagnosed with terminal cancer. Worried about the legacy he'll leave behind for his family once he's gone and unable to provide for them on a teacher's salary, Walter joins the criminal underworld by becoming a meth cooker and supplier. He quickly makes a name for himself by using his science expertise to create a very pure form of the substance. But as his ever-increasing power gets to his head, his number of enemies grows, and he starts putting himself and his family in more and more dangerous situations. Plenty of viewers love to talk about when exactly in the series Walter White broke bad. An alarming number of people say it was closer to the final season of the series when Walter was at the top of the criminal empire. But I would argue that Walter White was always bad. Like, literally from the first episode. Walter's pride has always been his literal fatal flaw, and we have known he was prideful from the very first episode of the show. The pilot, people. By episode 5 of the show, after he's been cooking for a while, Walter was given an out. He could have gotten out of there. His old colleagues from his former startup offered not only to pay for his cancer treatment, but they also offered him a job that paid way more than a teacher salary. But Walter refused, because he had to be the one to provide for his family. His pride couldn't allow him to accept a huge favor. Even though every single day he cooked illegal substances and fraternized with dangerous criminals and put his entire family at risk of dying, Walter couldn't accept a literal life-saving opportunity because it would bruise his fragile ego too much. Now, Walter White as a character is one of my favorites ever. His development over the 5-season run of the show is some of the best I have ever seen. The way that showrunner Vince Gilligan has audiences empathizing with and rooting for one of the most villainous characters in TV history is a masterclass in writing and character. I love Walter White. As a character, I need to emphasize that because there are plenty of people out here who idolize Walter White. And I'm like, what for? What do you mean you want to be like Heisenberg? Oh, well, he's just like mistreated by society and people really don't understand him. He's so misunderstood. My friend, Walter White is a loser because of the choices that he made. Ironically, it's the people who say things like that that actually are the ones that misunderstand Walter. Walter White is and has always been a selfish, insecure, pathetic man who believed that he was better than everyone and that he deserved a life better than the one that he made for himself. And when that inevitably didn't happen, he grew bitter and resentful of his life and the people in it. Okay, yeah, I know that was mean, but Walter deserves it. He fucking sucks. Like, besides having an ego 3 times the size of that glistening bald head of his, Walter was not a good person. Like, just to sound off a handful of some of the worst things that we've seen him do, he let a woman choke to death on her own vomit when he could have saved her, attempted to force himself on his wife, worked with literal neo-Nazis who forced his partner into slavery and only stopped working with said neo-Nazis because they robbed him, planted a bomb in a nursing home to eliminate one of his enemies, even though it could have very easily killed other innocent patients and staff, tried to kidnap his infant daughter, poisoned a child.
You can't keep getting away with it!
Real role model, that guy. And there are still people who say,
Well, he only did all of that stuff because he had to protect his family. He did it for his family. He did it for his family.
no, he didn't. Walter doesn't even believe that.
I did it for me. I liked it.
The creator of the show had the main character straight up tell the audience that he was a bad person. And some of you still walked away thinking, man, how can I be more like this egomaniacal murderer? And don't even get me started on the fans' treatment of Walter compared to the treatment of his wife, Skylar. That would take a whole other, Anna Gunn deserved better. She really did. Regardless, Walter White is a bad person. The show is called Breaking Bad, for crying out loud. If your takeaway from 5 seasons of Walter committing countless crimes and making his family's life a living hell for years is Walter White is the alpha giga chat king we've been waiting for, then yikes. This is me if I see you in public. Yeah, feel hurt? You should. Moving on, we've got Homelander. Now, this one is particularly weird, and I genuinely thought that people were joking when they completely misread this character. Homelander may be one of the greatest TV villains right now. Note how I said villain. Not hero, not anti-hero, not anti-villain, villain. Because that is literally the only thing that we have been shown of Homelander. Not a single redeemable quality in sight. In the Prime Video series The Boys, Homelander is the leader of the Seven, the most famous superhero team in the world. He's basically the Superman of his universe. Super strength, heat vision, flight, all that jazz. Initially presenting himself to the public as an all-American, altruistic crime fighter, the reality is that Homelander is a violent, sociopathic, high-tempered, insecure, vindictive man-child with the powers of a god. The show has never shied away from the truth about Homelander, even if the general public within the universe of The Boys is unaware of his true nature. But the really cool thing about watching a TV show is that we, as audience members, have access to more knowledge and information than the characters within the show. So even with all of this additional info that we were given as viewers, some still had to find a way to tell the rest of the world how much empty space they have between their ears. Homelander is such a well-crafted villain because he's the most powerful person on the planet with the shortest fuse. He takes pleasure in killing people less powerful than him, which is basically everybody. And because of his tendencies to rage,
You stay the fuck back or I'll laser you!
you always hold your breath when he enters a scene because you truly don't know what he's going to do or what will set him off. Again, very well-written villain. But tell me why there was a subset of fans of The Boys who around midway through the 3rd season cried foul because the show was suddenly painting Homelander as the villain and not the hero of the series. Suddenly? Suddenly? Homelander does this in the 1st episode, by the way. I'll admit that the show did become slightly more explicit with its characterization of Homelander in later seasons, drawing many parallels to real-life events. But the show has never tried to paint Homelander as anything other than the worst individual on the show. And yet plenty of fans were upset that the woke left writers were ruining his character. This character. This one right here? This man knowingly started a romantic relationship with a Nazi. Homelander was literally in bed with fascists, and at no point did these viewers think that he might not be the guy that we should be rooting for. Odd. Weird. I do think, though, that a lot of viewers' misreading of Homelander speaks to a larger misreading of The Boys as a whole. There are several instances of people completely missing the satirical elements of this very satirical show, so I guess it shouldn't be too shocking that people somehow managed to rub their remaining brain cells together to come to the conclusion that the undisputed villain of the entire franchise was actually the hero all along. Here's hoping they look a little bit more beyond the red, white, and blue surface of Homelander when season 4 drops later this year. Well, then they're just setting up for his redemption arc. Shut the fuck up. Shut up. Shut up. It's not happening. He is irredeemably awful. Oh my god. Time for round 3, Alicent Hightower. Now, I'm sure I wasn't the only Game of Thrones fan who was excited when season 1 of House of the Dragon hit our TV screens in the summer of 2022. It had been 3 years since the Game of Thrones series finale, and plenty of us wanted to go back to Westeros, scheming and dragons. What more could you ask for? Set almost 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon sets the stage for what will become a fiery royal family civil war, following the lives of Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, the named heir to the Seven Kingdoms, and her best friend turned stepmother turned political rival Alicent Hightower. Surprisingly not the weirdest character dynamic in the show. Over the course of season 1, we see how these women are pitted against each other by a very patriarchal society, and how in a lot of ways they're at the mercy of the whims of the powerful men in authority over them, despite how much power they may hold in their own right, or how dutiful they are to both their family and the realm. The show, based on George R.R. Martin's novel Fire and Blood, takes many creative liberties, deviating from the source material in several instances, namely in providing more nuance and objectivity to a story initially presented as a collection of subjective and biased recounting of events by in-universe characters. I never read the books, so I won't necessarily speak to how different the show characters are from their book counterparts. This is an adaptation, after all. And personally, I loved how the show handled these very complex characters. House of the Dragon does a great job of showing the perspectives of opposing characters, making it difficult to inevitably choose a side because you can see where both sides are coming from. So let's talk Alicent Hightower. She's the daughter of Sir Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, the second most powerful man in the country. After the death of King Viserys' wife in the first episode, Otto forces his teenage daughter to begin keeping the emotionally vulnerable King Viserys company. Otto does this because he knows the king will need a new wife. And what better way to seize more power for himself than by pimping out his daughter to marry the king? What a weirdo. Like, the funeral for the queen just happened, and Otto's already like, go seduce the king, and make sure that you're wearing your dead mother's dress. If the king can't see your shoulders, this will all be for nothing.
You might wear one of your mother's dresses.
This works, by the way. The power struggle only intensifies as Alicent gives birth to a son, Aegon. Even though Viserys had named Rhaenyra, his oldest daughter, his heir, the existence of a potential male heir threatens her claim to the throne. Obviously, because all of these old-timey traditional lords would prefer a male ruler. And this is basically the main conflict of the show. As the king's health quickly declines, uncertainty grows amongst the royal family as to who will succeed him. Knowing either option of Rhaenyra or Aegon could start a war, both sides rightfully fear for the security of their stations and their lives. Alicent should be a character that is easy to empathize with. Forced into a marriage by her power-hungry father to an old, decrepit king preoccupied with his custom Lego set is something I doubt most of you are putting up on your vision boards. But because she's a woman in this deeply patriarchal society, it's Alicent's womanly duty to marry the king and produce an heir. But because of this, her childhood was robbed from her. Compare her to Princess Rhaenyra, who also had duties, but was more or less allowed to flout responsibility because she was the favored child of the king. Of course, Alicent would harbor some resentment for Rhaenyra because of that. That makes sense. The same man, the king, allowing Rhaenyra to behave irresponsibly was holding Alicent to some higher standard of duty. And that man is also your husband. On top of this, Rhaenyra's recklessness and lies directly lead to the dismissal of Otto, Alicent's only real ally, like it or not, as the Hand of the King. And as the gravity of the situation escalates, Rhaenyra's admittedly reckless and irresponsible nature only makes Alicent even more worried about her safety and that of her children. Alicent is easily one of the most interesting and complex characters on the show. So imagine my surprise when I log on to twitter.com after one of the season 1 episodes aired to see the absolute dumpster fire that was Alicent Hightower discourse. Her suffering is her and her father's fault. Girl crying like this isn't her fault. Fuck Alicent. All my homies hate Alicent. I like Daenerys because she's a good person. I hate Alicent because she's a bad one. Daenerys? Oh. Comparing Daenerys to Alicent in a good person competition is crazy. The wolf hide in sheep's clothes. A pretty woman, but a monster in hiding. Alicent always looks confused, like she doesn't know her sons are the literal spawn of Satan. I hate her and her children so fucking bad. The difference here is mofos have zero real reasons to actually hate Sansa. Alicent is a hater who can't mind her fucking business. Okay, that one's actually kind of true. Alicent 100% is a hater, and it's funny. Alicent is the biggest hater. Every time I rewatch House of the Dragon, I hate Alicent even more. I hate Alicent Hightower so much. Evil babe. Just a serious lack of empathy with a sprinkle of misogyny thrown in for good measure. And you should bear in mind that in the same show where Alicent Hightower is the worst character to ever disgrace a TV screen, there are at least 2 male characters in the same show who killed their wives. And one of those 2 characters groomed his underage niece. And he's the fan favorite. Don't get me wrong, over the course of the first season, Alicent does make some not so great decisions. And ultimately, she must take responsibility for her actions. All of them. But there were seriously grown men on the internet insinuating Alicent was a cold and heartless bitch for marrying her best friend's father. as if she had any choice in the matter.
Well, she could have refused.
She was a child. Not only was the man who told her to keep the king company her father, but he was also the hand of the king. He didn't ask her, it was a command. And King Viserys didn't ask Alicent to marry him. He just announced it.
I have decided to take a new wife, the Lady Alicent Hightower.
And he's the king. So divine right to rule and absolute power and all that, blah, 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 yada, 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 yada. Alicent had no choice. Full stop. And it's crazy because there's actually several reasons to dislike Alicent. I would say the worst thing she's done was demand for the forcible removal of Rhaenyra's son Lucerys' eye after her own son Aemond accidentally lost an eye because of Lucerys. This was obviously way too extreme, and Alicent was in the wrong for this, but you really do need to understand the situation that she was in. King Viserys placed no consequences for Rhaenyra or her children for the incident. Mind you, Aemond, the boy who lost his eye, is the king's son, too. The prince, in the midst of a brewing royal family civil war, to see that the king still favored the reckless princess over his wife and his own son. I'd be pissed too. We can still be critical of Alicent's actions so long as we are equally critical about the situations that led her to make those actions. This was a child whose agency was stolen from her at a young age simply for being a girl, and was manipulated by the men in her life who were supposed to have her best interests at heart. And as a result, she is now an adult in the unenviable position of having to choose between what's best for peace in the realm and what's best for her family. And what's best for peace may straight up end in the slaughter of her entire family. Yeah, not great, huh? As season 2 of House of the Dragon comes by this June, I just hope that Twitter has taken this 2-year off period to reassess. Otherwise, Dracarys. Last up, Billy Hargrove. Billy was a minor antagonist in both the second and third seasons of Stranger Things. The older stepbrother of fan favorite Max, Billy spent every second he appeared on screen in his first season verbally and physically abusing Max and her love interest Lucas. So naturally, he has a die-hard fan base and countless fan edits in his honor. Oh boy, here we go. This may be one of the more egregious examples of an audience's seeming unwillingness to engage critically with the images plastered in front of them in 4K. Because Billy is your archetypal 80s bully. Short-tempered, prone to violence, and with a large dash of racism. But apparently an alarming number of people missed the not-so-subtle subtext in this scene.
Have a nice life.
That kid you were talking to.
Something you learn is that there are certain type of people in this world that you stay away from. That kid is one of them.
Yeah, I heard that and clocked it immediately. But this flew over the heads of plenty of people. The creators of the show have even gone as far as opening up about the character and how Billy was written explicitly to be racist. He was even supposed to be throwing around racial slurs in early versions of the script, but Billy actor Dacre Montgomery chose not to.
Don't want to say those words.
So the bigotry was made more implicit, but the way the Billy stans ran with that as an excuse to ignore it completely is very weird. And what's even weirder than the dismissal of Billy's prejudiced tendencies,
Stay away from her,
is the way the same fans will bend over backwards to apologize for his behavior. Now, just like Alicent Hightower, I can recognize how one's upbringing affects their behavior and their outlook on life. But just like Alicent, we are all still responsible for our actions. Near the end of season 2, we learned that Billy's father was physically abusive. And in season 3, while possessed by an interdimensional cloud demon thing, this abuse is further explored.
But there is a pussy for a son.
Now, I'm obviously empathetic to Billy's unfortunate childhood. However, Billy is not off the hook in my books. He may have been abused himself, but he was also abusive to his stepsister and her boyfriend and her friends. He literally tried to run them off the road with his car. I think a lot of the desire to defend Billy comes from a good place, but let's not pretend that this man wasn't abusive and racist unprovoked. He chose to make life a living hell for Max and her friends, and he took pleasure in it. Unlike Alicent, who at least had the preservation of her children's lives as the guiding force for her actions, despite how misguided many of those actions were, Billy is an asshole for fun. Side note, I know I keep defending Alicent like my life depends on it, but it's truly just because people are so willing to ignore Alicent's traumatic upbringing and declare her the Antichrist, yet give mustache-twirlingly vile characters like Billy the baby girl benefit of the doubt. It is very strange that they don't extend these two characters the same courtesy. Man, if only we could pinpoint the exact reason why. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. If only Billy hadn't died at the end of season 3, we would have seen his redemption arc. Whoa. Slow your roll there, partner. This is a man who chose to do the wrong thing almost every chance he got. And yes, he died protecting Eleven from the Mind Flayer, but I'm not giving him too much credit. Who's to say that had he survived the ordeal, he would have changed as a person? Would he have treated Max better? Changed his ideology overall? I don't know. But let's not act like a redemption arc was in the cards, or even deserved, for that matter. Just admit that you're attracted to the actor who plays Billy. Just say that you're willing to forgive the horrible actions of a horrible character if you think they're hot. I just want to hear you say it. All right, so how'd you do on this little test? Hopefully you felt the same way about all of these characters as I did, because not only would that make you a smart cookie, it would also make you right. But seriously, I think a lot of the reasons why people miss or overlook a lot of the nuance in film and television is because of a lack of willingness to engage with the content beyond the surface. I hear the common argument, I'm just here for entertainment. In response to this, or when the slightest hint of an ideology is detected, sometimes it's, well, keep politics out of movies. These people are wrong on both fronts. Every film and television series has a message to convey. All art is inherently political because the message being conveyed in the content is the message the creator wants to share. And their message is shaped by their ideology, which is shaped by their experiences, which can be either similar or different from our own. Now, some may find that irritating, but honestly, that's kind of stupid because that's the reason we engage with art in the first place. I can't tell you how many movies I've watched that have made me rethink the way I view certain topics just because it shared a perspective that was either unfamiliar to me or different from my own. Engaging with these diverse sets of characters critically allows us not only to be entertained by them, but understand why they're there in the first place. What does the creator of this character want me to learn from this character? If I identify wholeheartedly with the character who is designed to be the evil villain of a franchise, maybe there's something about my belief system that's worth a little bit of introspection. Maybe. Just a little little bit, please. I also think it's important to practice media literacy when it comes to film and TV because plenty of the scenarios that we see on screen are inspired by real life events. Obviously, dragons and demogorgons aren't a part of daily life, but our thoughts on how these characters deal with these situations say plenty about how we would respond to similar situations in the real world. It's only just a movie until it happens to you. Culture influences art, which influences culture, which influences art, and so on and so on. Movies and TV can be an escapist fantasy, but I believe it's still important to not fully turn our brains off when we consume creative media. You might just miss out on a life-altering message. Or you end up embarrassing yourself at a party when you call a 14-year-old Alicent Hightower a bitch for being forced to accept a marriage proposal from literally the highest authority in the land. There's me bringing up Alicent Hightower again. The Alicent Hightower defense never stops, I promise you that. Well, that's all the rant that I've got for today, so thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the bell so that you're notified the next time I'm about to go on another unhinged tangent just like this one. Also, leave some comments about your favorite characters who, when it comes to internet discussion about them, people clearly seem to lack media literacy. It's not just these ones, I promise you that. There's plenty. I've been Tope. I'll see you later. Go subscribe. Do it. Go subscribe. Go subscribe. Do it. Do it now. Ow.